Welcome to the StayOnTheCourt.com podcast, the show that helps aging basketball players stay on the court and continue playing basketball or the sport that they love. We talk injuries, rehab, coaching youth sports, pickup game mishaps, and oh yeah, that guy in your court that wants to fight everybody. Our motto is, we don't stop playing because we grow old, we grow old because we stop playing. So I got to dig into the Sicilian team. Fascinated.
Yeah.
Did they pay you in cash?
Yes.
They did.
They absolutely did. They were like, I didn't actually witness it, but like literally like a brown paper bag. Like this is it. I remember at ABCD camp, I played against him, and any time that his foot hit the paint, he was trying to dunk it. And I had never seen anybody do that in my life before. I mean, this guy was the most athletic person I'd ever seen.
You caught up by 4, though. Paul Vitelli making things interesting. Vitelli enjoying the view. Brings Yale within 1, and then Vitelli 3 for 6 from three-point range. Yale is leading by 1.
Welcome to the StayOnTheCourt.com podcast. This is your host, Troy Wallace. As usual, recording from the beautiful studios in Omaha, Nebraska. Our guest today in this episode is Paul Vitelli. He is a nearly 900-point scorer for Yale University during his 4-year career from 2000 to 2004. He also played professionally for 3 years in Italy. Now, if you don't listen to anything else, you have to hear his stories about playing in Italy. So how he got there, his experiences there. You got a little glimpse of that in the cold open. Just great, funny stories. So it should be around the 25-minute mark of the episode. Paul is also the chief operating officer of Swish House, a basketball fitness business, and is also the owner-operator of the franchise in New York City. I thought about dividing this into a part 1 and part 2, do 2 separate episodes because there's so much good stuff in here. But instead, as always, in the show notes on your favorite podcast platform or in the description on YouTube, you'll see a timestamp kind of table of contents so you can skip around if you need to. Again, we're just hitting it out of the park with another great guest and just a fantastic person. So here are 3 gigantic things you're going to learn in this episode. Number 1. Whether you should or should not take your girlfriend to Italy while you're playing professionally. Again, you got to hear these stories. Number 2. How Paul has adjusted his exercise routine now that he is over 40. He talks about some of his issues with arthritis. As a side note, we're going to do an episode deep dive on arthritis. I just learned that a guy I used to play with has retired because of some hip arthritis. And as we age, we all know that's just something that we might have to deal with, and we certainly want some strategies on how to heal or stave it off. And number 3. How he turned playing basketball into a business when he got involved with Swish House in New York City. And of course, there are all kinds of other things in this episode, like his path to play basketball at an Ivy League school. And of course, we do the lightning round. That should be around the 40-minute mark. Now, we recorded this in March when Yale had just notched its second ever NCAA tournament win, so this will timestamp it a little bit. But for the most part, this is an evergreen episode. As you can see, I'm recording the intro in June. It is College World Series time in Omaha. If you go to YouTube, you can see I'm wearing my short sleeve orange armadillo shirt that only comes out in the summer. So without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging interview with Paul Vitelli. Paul Vitelli, welcome to the StayOnTheCourt.com podcast. We certainly appreciate you being here. We know you are a former Yale player, and I want things to be evergreen on the podcast, but we're going to date stamp this a little bit. So obviously we're just on the other side of the first round of the NCAA tournaments in 2024. And Yale got what they said their second win in history in the NCAA tournament.
That's correct. I don't remember when the first one was.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean,
I think they beat Baylor a few years back. That was the one where the guy, I forgot his name, said how to get a rebound. That was that whole game. Yeah.
Well, I think the whole world gets behind the Ivy League when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Did you guys make the NCAA tournament when you were there?
We did not. So my sophomore year, they didn't have an Ivy League tournament back then. It's a pretty recent thing that they put in. So
okay.
The outright winner of the Ivy League was the one that went to the tournament.
The regular season winner.
Yep.
Got it.
So my sophomore year, though, we ended up in a 3-way tie with Penn and Princeton. So it was one of the first playoffs that we had to have to see who went to the actual tournament. Right. And we beat Princeton at the Palestra. So we moved on and then played against Penn for the right to go to the tournament. And then we lost to Penn. And I think we played at Lafayette. So we ended up playing in the NIT that year. And then Penn went to the tournament.
Oh,
I know.
That's yes. Well, what are you going to do?
Well, we beat Rutgers at the RAC for the NIT,
right.
And they were very tough that year, so that was really cool.
I saw this year for the first time, like people decided not to play in the NIT, and I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
like it's kind of like the way of basketball. As a matter of fact, I've got for people that are listening, we're going to do our. I know everybody loves our 5-question speed round. And I have something related to that a little bit later. I do not disclose the questions; they're not usually controversial, but we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Paul, several reasons I want to have you on the show is number one, there's a lot of people that didn't play Division I Ivy League basketball. So I think there's going to be a lot of us folks that didn't have that opportunity that are interested in what that process looks like. And then, we'll maybe hit this a little bit later, but you are the chief operating officer of Swish House, and we're definitely going to talk about what's going on with that in New York City. So we're going to hit definitely both of those. Let's go back to what I'm always interested in is you're growing up, you're playing grade school basketball or you're maybe getting into middle school or high school. At what point, and you're 6'8", correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So at what point did you know that that's even a possibility to go play at a college level? Was that something that were you 6'8" in 8th grade, or was there something, even when you were young in grade school that, your parents maybe was like, oh, geez, this could be a thing. When did that happen?
It's a good question. I don't really remember when it actually clicked. My uncle on my dad's side, he played at LIU Brooklyn and was a 1,000-point scorer there. So I think in my family, the knowledge that you could play basketball at the next level was already there. When I don't know if anybody knew that I would be able to do it until I was probably in high school and started playing AAU. So I'm 6'8" now, but I was a late grower. So, which
Right.
actually I think benefited me as a basketball player, because growing up, I would always play like the 2 and the 3 in grade school because I was tall, but not the tallest guy. So I had developed like guard skills and small forward skills. So I could shoot, I could dribble a little bit. And I think I went into high school at like 5'9". And then by the end of my sophomore year, I was like 6'5", 6'6". So I had just shot up. Yeah, I mean, it was terrible. I could barely walk. But I had developed these skills growing up as a guard, and then all of a sudden I'm handcuffed to the post at like 6'5", 6'6" in high school because now I am the tallest guy.
Right.
So I was able to sort of develop some skills there. And then because I had grown so quickly and because I was tall and I had some guard skills, a lot of parents that, we were friends with in high school and growing up in grad school were like, oh, we should put him on the AAU circuit and see what that would expose him to. And that wasn't really like AAU back then wasn't what it was now. I mean, it was still a big deal, and that's how you got a lot of exposure, but it's not the same beast that it is today. But it was then when I started playing against guys who were ranked in the state, who were ranked in other states, that I got to see that, I had the potential to play at the next level because I had the size and the skill. And, as I think, I'm not sure when they were legally allowed to send me some mail, but once I started getting stuff in the mail after tournaments, that's when I was like, okay, I should really start paying attention to this, and this is a good opportunity for me.
Right. Well, I would argue, and I went through this a little bit with my nephew. I went to a lot of the AAU tournaments, and I would argue back then it was more of a prestige thing to be in an AAU program. I mean, I think now, if you've got the money, your parents are willing to pay, you'll find an AAU program. You'll find somebody that is willing to take the money.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. I remember going through tryouts, and the second year that I played in AAU, I was down, they were called the Central Jersey Hawks at the time. And there was like an hour and a half from where I lived in Morristown that I would have to go to practice each week because they were one of the better teams in New Jersey, and I had to go through this whole process and the whole tryout to get on the team. So it was kind of like more of a prestige thing, I guess, in that moment. And there weren't a lot of teams around my area that I could play for either. So it was, I think there were just fewer teams, and therefore you had to go through tryouts, and it was more of a selection process.
So tell me that again. You went into your freshman year at 5'9"?
Something like that, yeah.
And then by your sophomore year, you were 6'5"?
It was something crazy like that. I mean, I was going through pants. Like my mom's like, "I'm not buying you any more pants." Like I would just go through clothes, and I was losing. Obviously, start losing coordination and everything like that. Thankfully, I was able to get it back. But yeah, it was a quick spurt.
If I was the opposing player and I played you last year, and then I show up the next year to see that, I'd be so pissed.
Well, it was funny, actually, at my high school, no matter who you are. So at my high school, Troy Murphy, I don't know if you remember that name.
I do.
So
he went to Notre Dame, right?
Went to Notre Dame and then had a great career, double guy in the league. But everybody who comes to Delbarton has to play their freshman year on a freshman team. So no matter how good you are, you don't play varsity.
Right.
So there were very few people that saw me freshman year, and like when I came, I was just this new tall guy. No one had really seen the change that much. So
yeah, that's I had that instance once. So I went to University of Kansas basketball camp, and I played with a guy who was about the same height as me, and I was already 6'3" by 8th grade or so.
Oh, wow.
Okay, a similar body type. And then I see him 2 years later. He's a sophomore. Sophomores were playing the JV game, and I just see this guy, still my height, but just a complete Hulk of a human being. So he ended up going on to the University of Nebraska, won 2 national championships as a defense or as an offensive tackle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happened to me a lot. Where I grew quickly, right? So in 8th grade, 6'3", hey, but then I stopped, and they all didn't stop.
Yeah, actually, I through college I grew. So I entered college at like 6'6", and then I finished at 6'8". So I just kept kind of growing a little bit throughout that time. Yeah,
that's was my experience too. I had the 2 guys that backed me up. I had to play center my senior year, and one guy who's my best friend was my year, and he ended up growing another 2 inches after college. And then the guy who was a year younger than me was about 6'2", and he ended up by his senior year being 6'7", went on to play tight end for Nebraska. Yeah.
Everybody's going to go play football in Nebraska, huh?
Yeah. That's where all the big talented guys go. Definitely. That is the culture. So fast forward, you grow, you're starting to know, obviously when the AAU circuit, you're getting some interest. So you know that this could be a thing. Mm-hmm. What is the mix at that point of people talking seriously to you about, D2 offers versus D1 versus, big conference schools like Big East schools? What did that look like for you?
There were a lot of, I guess, Ivy League, Patriot League letters that I was getting at that time. That was kind of where I was. There was a few D3 schools. I'm trying to remember which ones that I knew were very good schools from an education perspective. And there was a few Big East schools that had come to see me at a few camps. I think the best one at the time was Notre Dame.
Okay.
But I wasn't getting a lot of letters from Big East schools. It seemed to me that I would be in some of this Ivy League, Patriot League area right there. And then once I took my SATs and I did pretty well in them and that got out, it became almost like a known fact that I was going to be going to an Ivy League school, even though I hadn't said that. That just came to be like something that was known that I wanted to do.
Right.
So that's when, I don't know if it was the chatter around that, just, saying, hey, this kid does well in school. Like, I think he wants to go to Ivy school. They're recruiting him hard. That's where he's going to go. I don't know which came first, or if I was like, yeah, I want to go to Ivy school. Because once I started getting letters from Harvard and Yale, like my parents went ballistic. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing."
In a good way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you get to get this education, and you know you got to be realistic too as a kid in high school. Even though you know it's hard to have some sort of grounded perspective, but like I remember I got invited to the ABCD camp, which at that time was a very big deal. That was like where the top 150 players were, and just getting on the court there and just feeling completely outmatched for the first day or two of playing. Like these are guys that are from all over the country who just look like just grown men who have unbelievable athleticism and skill, and I'm still kind of growing into my body and not knowing where to fit in. So there became a balancing act of, okay, well, you're good, but you're not one of these guys. None of the NBA is not looking at you. This is not this is not a choice for you right now. You're not going to go to the Big East. Maybe you walk on, but in reality, here are some fantastic schools that are going to provide a really good education, and you're going to be able to get playing time from the moment you step into school, basically. So having that balance, I had to be like, all right, I think this is the way to go. And obviously, again, my parents were like, Yale or Harvard, because that's like a parent's dream. So, yeah.
And at this point, I mean, I always thought that the Ivy League schools were not able to give athletic scholarships. Was that still true, or was that just something in my mind that I made up?
No, that was true then. They were need-based scholarships for athletes, but not full athletic scholarships.
I really just thought they had some sort of workaround.
I mean, need-based it definitely helps.
Right.
Student athletes who need that. But yeah, no, there were no athletic scholarships. I think at that time the Patriot League had just started, and it was only a few schools that were offering it at the time. But yeah, no scholarships like that.
Okay, so that was out of the equation. You didn't necessarily you felt like you were going to Patriot League, and parents were comfortable with having to pick up whatever bill was left over. So that was a decision process.
Yeah, I mean, there were opportunities to get scholarships at other schools, that were not, and thankfully, I mean, so grateful to be able to not have to worry about the financial part of this. So, when my parents said, "Look, you don't need to get a scholarship. We're going to help you." So I didn't feel the pressure to take a scholarship at another school when I really wanted to go to a good school like Yale.
Well, no, it's a strong thing. So we had a kid here in the Omaha, Nebraska area, and as people listen to the podcast, they're going to, even though I don't pronounce it a lot, Creighton Blue Jay fan. This is where I went to school, so they're going to hear that bias every once in a while. But we'd offered a guy here in the area, and he was about 6'9", pretty athletic kid. And then I used to play basketball with his dad, and he got like a perfect score on the ACT.
Wow.
And here came the offer from Stanford, and Creighton was out.
Yeah. Stanford, I mean, that would have been a dream too.
Yeah. No. And it's good for him. But like, wait, you got to be 6'9", and you have to get perfect scores in the ACT? I mean, leave something for the rest of us.
That was kind of the equation at the time. You were talking about the mix. There was a big mix, but those, based on what I was able to do on the SATs and my grades in high school, the Ivies just seemed to be the best choice for me.
Right. So you make that decision, and Yale wins out.
Yeah.
So once you get on campus, is it is Yale one of those programs where it's very junior, senior heavy, and they're doing a lot of development, or did you have an opportunity to play immediately, or what did that look like?
It was an interesting time because we were actually Coach Jones's first recruiting class.
Right.
So he had just started in 1999. So there were guys on the team when I got to school who were some of the recruits for the old coach. And then my year, we had, I believe, 6 new recruits. So there were like 6 freshmen, and then we had a buddy of mine walked on. So there were actually 7 of us at one point. And then there were 7 guys who were previous recruits. And there just became this sort of battle between Coach Jones recruits and the established guys that were on the team. And
Right.
thankfully, I mean, myself and another freshman, one of my best friends, Matt Minoff, we were able to start for the team at the 2 and the 3, I believe. So we got to play right away. And I mean, the issue was when in the change of coaching, I think that there were some people that were upset that the previous coach had left, or they didn't agree with Coach Jones's style. So a lot of the guys had left when we had stepped in my freshman year. So there was this sort of vacuum that needed to be filled. And thankfully, like, I was able to earn my way up. So even though there were some seniors on the team, and I think 2 of the 3 had started at the 4 and the 5, Coach Jones put in some of the freshmen as well on the starting 5 too. So there was this kind of balance based on who was there.
And is there, and maybe you don't know this, or, I mean, to me, they're recruiting a lot of really good players. I mean, just watching this year, at least, I was just like, wow, there's some really real talent. And Creighton played Princeton last year, and I mean, they had a couple of, I mean, really talented players. You kind of saw it around the league. A lot of them graduate transferred to other programs.
Yeah.
After that run, so that always happens. But in the Ivy League, are they building to play a certain type of basketball? So is it? I know everybody wants to make the NCAA tournament and win a couple games, or make a run like Princeton did last year. But are they building a team typically to win the Ivy League, play a certain way to win the Ivy League?
It's a really good question. It's kind of hard from this stance back here. I know that when I was there, the Princeton offense was a huge thing that I not only did other teams in college take from, but so did some NBA teams will run some sort of same Princeton action. But the Princeton offense was like it was like a winning strategy at that time. And I've seen over the years, a lot of teams that, the coaches who have coached either, as an assistant coach at Princeton go and take that offense into another Ivy League school and add their twist to it. So for a long time, the Princeton offense was kind of the way to win the Ivy League.
Right.
UPenn at the time I was there was a little bit of opposite. They had a more athletic type of style, and there was a lot of pick and rolls and finding mismatches, which seemed more of like the NBA, more of a game that people are used to. And I think over the years, just watching it, it's kind of coaches have taken a little bit from each, and I'm not saying necessarily that the UPenn is, I'm only using that because at the time that was like one of the best teams that had an established offense. I think now there's a combination of sort of the Princeton and Penn style, where it's a very disciplined style of play that combines with pick and rolls and 2-man action that you normally see in the NBA. So I think now it's a much more advanced offense than when I was playing, that takes little pieces of everything now. And I was watching Yale play the other night against San Diego State, and when they played against Auburn. I mean, they're running 2-man action as if they're in running an NBA offense. That's not something that we did too often when I was there. So I think the offenses have just sort of advanced and picked parts of Ivy League offenses that have worked in the past, and like you said, recruiting good players now who can actually make one-on-one moves or operate, in isolation. Now, I just think the league has gotten better over the course of time, and a lot of teams kind of use this combination of offenses to win. Now, I don't see a lot of just Princeton-only strategies at this point. So it's tough to say, but I guess my point is I've seen an evolution of it, and I think it's in a really good place right now, and I really like the offense that Yale runs. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah. Side note. So we talk periodically, we dive into like youth basketball coaching, because a lot of the people that listen are, we're aging athletes that want to keep playing basketball. But if you're 30s, 40s, 50s, you like basketball, you're probably starting to coach your kids and do things like that. And I tried to teach my 5th grade team the Chin series in the Princeton offense.
Yeah.
And that did not go well. That lasted about 2.5 weeks, and I abandoned that ship. I had a post guy who was a pretty good little post player that I needed to get involved a little more.
Yeah.
And he got it, but nobody else did. So I was like, all right, we're done with that. Back to
I mean,
5 out.
just listening to you say chin, it's like I have post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, trying to guard that too, you have to learn it to guard it well.
Right.
So I end up trying to learn how the Princeton offense works. And I mean, to your point, you need a good big that can handle and make good decisions out of an offense like that. But I mean, it was very hard to guard.
Yeah, I just wanted that first action of go to the wing, back screen, post sets the back screen. That's it.
Yeah.
We'll score 20 points on that if you got, and it just, just didn't happen. Didn't happen for us. So as you went on playing at Yale, and I know you had a good career there, and as your career is winding down, what were you looking as options? What was your prospect for continuing to play on at some level beyond college?
So I think it was my junior year. Again, I don't really remember the time and when it was allowed to happen. Or maybe it was my senior year. I'm not really sure. But I started getting emails and letters from agents overseas, mostly who were in Italy, because I think, Vitelli kind of gives them the cue that maybe he can play here. Because I'm not sure if you or your listeners are aware, but if you go overseas and you get a citizenship in the country that you're playing in, you don't count as the few Americans that are allowed per team. So, for example, in Italy at the time, and this has changed a bunch, but you were allowed 3 Americans per team, 1 non-Italian European player, and then the rest had to be Italian players. Okay. So by getting a citizenship, I'm not considered an American player anymore. I'm considered an Italian player. So I think, agents who see very obvious names that could be part of, play in that country recruit guys that way. So I had a decent career, but I was getting, I didn't have NBA on my resume, which is what you need to go over there and play, without any trouble. But some agents were saying, hey, look, maybe I can help you get your dual citizenship, and then we can find you a team over here. So once I started getting those type of emails and those type of communications, and I talked with my parents and trying to figure out, like, is this something I should do? I kind of fully committed somewhere, halfway through my senior year that this is what I was going to be working on for my next step. And I honestly had no idea what that entailed, but I had an agent that I signed with that whenever it was legal to, and we worked on getting my dual citizenship after I graduated.
And did you end up doing that?
Yeah. So
really?
Yeah. So it was, I spent most of after I graduated that summer, I spent in New York City because both sides of my family had immigrated to the city and lived in Brooklyn, but I was tracing my Italian lineage back to Italy through, I swear I spent 6 or 7 weeks in City Hall looking through microfiche, finding birth and death certificates and marriage licenses for my family when they came over here, and tracking it all the way to myself. And by doing that and providing those documents and getting them officially recognized by the state and the country, I don't really remember that whole process, but it was very bureaucratic and long. I was able to provide those documents to my agent, who specialized in getting the citizenship, the Italian citizenship. And then, so once I had all those documents in line, I gave it to my agent. And after a few months, I was an Italian citizen.
I love the fact that there is a niche profession like that of sports agents specifically looking for Italian last name American basketball players, just to take all these steps to get a placement.
And I do think that I didn't have any insight into what happened on the other side once I gave my documents there, but something tells me that if you know someone who knows someone, that process goes a little bit easier than for some other people. And my agent had actually had another Italian guy who played from Princeton playing over there. His name was Mason Rocca. He actually had an amazing career overseas. So not only was he experienced in getting those citizenships, but he had experience coming to the Ivy League and finding the right guys and bringing them over. So that's how I ended up choosing this particular agent.
Right. So you landed there. I mean, you landed there playing professional basketball.
I did.
Was this immediately right after graduation?
So I spent that summer. I mean, I ended up, working out and getting ready. At the same time, I was tracking my lineage back to Italy, and it took a long time. And then I think once I had gotten my citizenship and my agent actually found me a team, and I had signed like in the very beginning of the season, they had already played their first games though. So I think I had signed in like October or November. So I got there late November, early December, and then played the rest of the season through May. So there was a little bit of a buffer between when I graduated and when I went there.
Okay, so I know there's not a lot of this information on the internet, and you don't have to share if you don't like. Okay. But what does a salary? What does a salary look like? And you came out of college in 2004, right?
Yep.
2000. So we're talking 20 years ago. Wow, yeah, 20 years ago. What did salaries look like at that point for playing in the Italian league?
It really it depended a lot on a number of things. For someone like me, who again didn't have a huge I didn't have a Big East SEC resume, and I didn't have the NBA on my resume. Right. I wasn't earning a lot, so I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 3,000 euros a month or something like that.
Right.
But there were guys over there that were getting paid, hundreds of thousands of euros. I'm pretty sure there were a couple guys in the top league making millions of euros that were, from over in the US. So I just figured I was an analyst. This was my entry level job. I had to prove myself, and then whatever they gave me, I was going to kind of just accept it and go. So that's pretty much what I ended up doing.
And you played multiple years. I think we talked, at least on email, was it 2 or 3 years that you played over there?
I played 3 years. Yeah.
And were you always playing on the same team, or do they have like divisionalized professional leagues?
So I played in the top 2 leagues. My first year, and to answer your first question, I was on a different team each time. The first team I was A2, and I stayed there from that November or December of 2004 through May of 2005. And then my next year, I actually played in the top league in a town in Sicily. And that was nice. A wild. I mean, it sounds nice, but it is like a time warp there. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous, but there was no internet. I mean, this is 2004. There's like barely dial-up internet.
Right.
No cell service. I'm sleeping on like a cardboard bed. There was a lot of, I don't know how to say this, but like a lot of mafioso activity around the team and what we were doing. I mean, that sounds so cliche, but it was true, and it really wasn't the spot for me. So I actually asked my agent to get me off of the team, and I did. So I went back home to the U.S. for a few months, and then I went back to a team that was by Milan, and that ended up being a really good team that I was there for, I don't know, maybe the same time, like November, December through the end of May 2007, I think at this point, or 6. And then I went back one more year to a different team that was in Milan. And then halfway through the season, they actually cut me. I'm not sure why. There was no real explanation, but I just don't think that my position was something that they needed at that time. So that was kind of the end of it.
So I got to dig into the Sicilian team. I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
Did they pay you in cash?
Yes.
They did.
They absolutely did. They were, I mean, I remember there was a couple of stories of like American guys who, like I didn't actually witness it, but like literally like a brown paper bag. Like, this is it. I mean, we were sponsored by like a lemon manufacturing plant that I never saw open.
Right. Why not?
So, yeah, I mean, playing overseas sounds glamorous, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity to play basketball for money, but it was a grind. And there were so many different things that happened over there, whether you weren't getting paid because you were losing, They're paying you in paper bags. Your agent doesn't call you back. You're without internet or whatever for months. You can't speak the language. It's just, there were so many things that you had to sort of overcome to make it happen. And that place was uniquely difficult. I remember one story that I always tell is that our gym that we were going to play at was under construction. So we had to, and it was like right by. It was actually, I don't know if you know Sicily that well. Have you been?
No, I had a friend of mine that just came back, and he was gushing about the beauty of it.
It's so beautiful, but it's basically a volcanic island. Like, it's just like beaches and there's mountains in the middle. And we basically stayed in the mountainside for a while, even though our gym was on, very close to the beach. And we would practice at this middle school gym, and they had all these posters on the wall. And I asked one of my Italian teammates, and I said, what is this about? And it turns out it was, do you remember DARE, the program DARE to keep kids off drugs?
Yes.
It was the same thing, except it was, instead of drugs, it was like the mafia. Like, don't get involved with the mafia. And that's where I was. I was like in the middle of all this stuff, and there were all these rumors that the vice president of the team was mafioso, and like people were getting paid in cash, and I was like, I need to get out of here. Despite the beauty of it, it was a very interesting situation.
And the low tax rate because you're getting paid in cash, right?
Indeed. Although
statute of limitations are gone, man, as it was 20 years ago.
Remarkably, I did claim most of it, if not all of it.
So when you got into playing games, let's talk about like the top league you were playing in. What types of I'm not going to say stadiums, but what types of arenas or gyms were these? Were they high school arenas? Could they fill 3,000 seat venue for these games? What was the popularity?
Yeah, it depended on where you were. Like the Sicilian gym was not that big. Maybe it sat like between 4,000 and 5,000. But if you played, but if you played against Milan, that ends up being in the tens. Like maybe it seats between 12 and 15. It may seat more now. I don't really know, but it really depended on which city you were in and who you were playing.
And when you play, it could be 10,000 seats, but were we talking half full, quarter full?
Again, it really depended on the team playing. So if like we were, if we were somewhat good, I think in Sicily we were like a middle of the pack team. So when we went and played some other, I don't remember exactly where we were. It wasn't like a huge town, but it was packed. When I was in A2, if it was a big game, there will be, again, those stadiums are probably like 3,000, 4,000. Some of them would be half full. It depended a lot on, the stakes and who was playing. But this is Italy. Like, they're fanatical about everything, but nothing as much as soccer. So that's where everybody's fandoms were.
Well, at least you didn't play in Macedonia. So a buddy of mine, guy who I was telling you that grew two more inches after high school, worked for the State Department, and he was working at the embassy in Macedonia. So he'd have to go out and make contacts in the company. He loved basketball, so they had a professional league there, and he would go. They would go to games, and he said it's just full on smoking. And this was probably like 2011, 2012. Like the whole gym just filled with smoke.
Yeah. The guys on my team would, especially my first year, like the game was over, we'd be in the shower, and they would have a lit cigarette in the shower, just like letting the water coming on, and they were just smoking in the shower usually after a loss. But I was like, what are we doing here?
Hey, some people would call that efficiency. You can get a shower in and get a smoke at the same time. That's
very efficient.
All right. Oh man, that is interesting. And I would say, $36,000 a year to hang out in Italy. And were you over there for 6 months of the year, 8 months of the year, or what was the commitment?
Yeah, the thing is, I never actually stayed a full year, but usually they want you there like late August through May. So it was a very long year. So it would be like anywhere between 8 and 10 months, I would say.
All right, maybe that's not so great. I was thinking you make 36, pick up 36 grand for 6 months work, live in Italy, young single guy, not bad. What was the groupie situation?
There were so I think the common
That's all you have to say if you want. So there was a groupie situation.
there was, but not. Didn't partake in the groupie because for me, that I thought when I was going to Italy, like it was just going to be models left and right, and that's only really true in Milan. There, for some reason, the cities that well, also Sicily, but I don't know if you've seen The Godfather, but like in Sicily, guns are women are as dangerous as shotguns.
Michele, lascia bere. In Sicilia femmine sono come la lupara.
Okay.
I was not looking at anybody. Um, so, but in the rest of the small towns that I was in, it was like a very the trend, the fashion trend at the time was to be like grungy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't really my thing. Also, my second year there, I took my girlfriend with me because she was like between jobs, so
That was probably smart.
I had someone come with me.
Yeah,
Yeah, not as fun.
that is
I'm sorry, I
probably
don't have fun stories for you.
that's all right. I just wanted to know if that existed at that level. That is interesting.
To some degree.
That is interesting. All right, so we're going to shift into what I like to call rapid fire questions.
I'm terrible
So,
at these.
well, hopefully there's nothing here too controversial. I've got my list, and I'd like to say I picked them randomly, but I don't. I customize them a little bit for everybody. So we're going to put some time on the clock. Again, I'm going to ask them rapidly. Your answers do not have to be rapid.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. Let's go. Question number 1. So present day, Paul Vitelli, playing pickup basketball. Are you going to the hoop or are you taking a 3?
Oh, taking a 3. I don't know if you like looked at any of my Yale stats or anything like that, but I've been making a living just running 3-point line to 3-point line for 20 years, pretty much.
Then I thought maybe you were change up your game for pickup ball.
I'm not going
no.
anywhere near the lane for pickup ball.
Yeah, that is as you get older. That is the common thing. I do not trust my ankles enough to go to the hoop anymore.
I don't trust it. That's true, but I also don't trust everyone knows how to play, so that
Yes,
you don't want to get undercut by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. So I stay far away from that.
All right, so we're going to go this. We'll call it this almost current event.
2,
So NCAA coaches that you might want to have a beer with, and I'm going to list 4, but then if none of them meet your criteria, you can add a coach of your choosing.
Okay.
So these just all happen to be coaches that are currently going to be in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. So here we go. The list is Greg McDermott of Creighton University, Danny Hurley of UConn, Hubert Davis, North Carolina,
Wow.
and Kelvin Sampson of Houston, or another coach of your choosing.
That's a great list. So first, I want to say that I would love to have a beer with my coach, James Jones of Yale, who just got exited. But Coach Jones is one of my favorite people, and was such a big part of my life. So I always want to have a beer with him.
Jones, a pregame speech, getting him crunked.
And let me tell you right now, we come together like we can, and we play hard. We can take on anybody, and we can beat anybody. All right, let's go stop it.
I just assumed that you may have already had a beer with him. So.
I have. I think last year, actually, just randomly. But I just wanted to say that I think Kelvin Sampson maybe, because I want to dig in. Didn't he get into some issues and some trouble when he was at Oklahoma? Was it Oklahoma?
Yeah, he got into some issues, but I think the beauty of time, right? I can't even remember what it was all about.
Well, interestingly, one of my assistant coaches when I was a freshman at Yale also got tangled up in that. I don't want to put names out there, but may have taken some of the rap and taken the bullet for some larger issues. But I would just I think, I don't know if he would tell me anything, but obviously he's a great coach with great experience. But I feel like he's got a lot of, I don't know, just a lot of interesting insights into being a coach and all of those kind of landmines that you have to skip. I mean, Hubert Davis also, just being able to pick his mind about his time in the league too. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, well, as I was looking at that list too, and it's interesting. I will have to give credit to 1620 The Zone. As I was driving in this morning, listening to sports radio, it was something that they were talking about. So I was like, "Oh, that's a great question."
Yeah, that's really good.
So Danny Hurley, just because I want to know if he's really that crazy, because I've heard he's not. If you get him in a normal situation,
yeah.
But then Kelvin Sampson, just because of the history, and all the places he's been and all the different coaching opportunities, and probably not to stick on the mafia, but a godfather of the game, right? That's been around for a while and seen a lot of different stuff. So, all right, let's go to question number 3. What is the most underrated skill in pickup basketball?
Ooh. Underrated skill. This doesn't necessarily mean that something that's not used a lot, right? Honestly, I think setting a good screen in pickup basketball, not many people know how to defend a screen when you're playing pickup, whether you're doing it off ball or on ball. I think that's a very good way to get yourself open, hopefully. So I love when I'm playing, I like to just do pick and pop. And I think setting a really good screen and being able to pop, and that's pretty much where I've made my living again for the last 20 years. Setting a good back screen and getting someone open. Like in pickup, nobody really knows how to defend screens. And if you're able to set a good one at the right time, you can get someone who doesn't often get the ball a good layup so they feel involved. And it's a good way to get yourself open if you're setting a strong one and obviously a legal one.
No, I think that's a good one. And I would say here's another advantage. So I'm 52. Yes, 52. And I can still run a little bit. So I like to cut to the opposite corner and space the floor, which is something nobody does in pickup basketball. Nobody wants to space the floor. But I would say once I get tired, I'm just setting that screen.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to go anywhere, right? No cutting. I just I'll pick the closest guy and let's set a screen for you.
Yeah, I think if you do it right at the right time too, it's almost selfish because they have to react, and then usually you can get a little jumper for yourself as well. I always find that like a lot of the good shooters, like even if you watch Steph play, they set really good screens because the defense has to react to it, and just even a little step in the wrong direction gets you open.
I was watching. Obviously, anybody listening to the podcast is probably a little bit of a basketball junkie, so I'm good company. But I was watching the Creighton women's play in their second round NCAA game last night for a little while, and they're a really good movement team and set a lot of screens, but their screens were so lazy last night. And you could tell, right, that nobody was getting open on the screens. I would say it. No, that is an underrated skill for sure. 4. Biggest change in college basketball from when you played to now?
I truly think that just the focus on 3-point shooting. I mean, I'm sure that there are other people that have a better answer than that, but I felt like when I was there, it wasn't a huge focus, and I played like a step out 4, which was pretty. I played 3 and 4, but like as a 4, whenever I was playing that position, I would step out and we do like 4 out, 1 in, and I think that was kind of true for the Ivy League, especially in that moment where if you're playing against a team that's bigger than you and more athletic, by spreading the floor, you may be able to get an advantage. Maybe you bring out a big guy at the 4 who's not used to guarding that position. So we shot a lot of threes for us, and that was like something that we focused on and help spread the floor. But I think now I'm just like watching the games, and people are just, the 3-pointer is just like a huge part of what the game is now. it's just that's not only for the NCAA, but that's also for the NBA. It's just pretty amazing how that's become such a huge part of the game.
It is, and I have proposed, well, to nobody, but in my mind is, because I think I've played some 3-on-3 tournaments.
Oh, nice.
And but they reward 3-point shooting, right? It's a 1 for any other basket. You get 2.
So you play FIBA, the FIBA 3-on-3.
I have. This is back when it used to be Hoop It Up. We used to be big. I haven't played in a while, but there was such an outsized return to shooting threes.
Sure.
Which honestly I didn't like. So I would like, and they're never going to do this, I would like them to change it from a 3 to a 2.75, or you like some other like lesser thing to even things out now. Because at the end of the day, yes, threes are fun, but I think it's now getting slightly out of balance.
It is. I don't mind it because that's what I do. So I'm kind of upset that that's what it is now. Because I would have hoisted way more back in my day. But I was looking at some NBA shot charts and the evolution of the shot charts over time, and now it's basically there's no mid range. It's there's the whole, you look outside the 3-point line, it's all dots, and then in the lane it's all dots, and then anywhere in between there's not a lot of shots taken. So there's a huge stress on it now. It's interesting.
Well, and so it's changing now as Creighton's in the Big East and something like that. But we had, the players that we placed into the NBA were 3-point shooters. Now, Kyle Korver, most people will know who he is.
Yep.
But then we had our one of our post players, Anthony Tolliver, who just completely refashioned his game to be a dead-eye. He was 6'9", probably, but a dead-eye 3-point. And he ended up playing for 12, 13 years just as a 3-point specialist.
Yeah. I think
could have been you.
I think the 3-and-D position is so interesting. Like, if you're a really good defender and you're an athletic defender and you can hit an open 3, people make livings off that. I think that's such an interesting position, and one that if I were more athletic and a little bit taller, that I would have loved to have played.
That is definitely a big change. All right, last question.
5.
Mm-hmm.
Will NIL ultimately be good or bad for college basketball?
I'm not the right person for this. I have no idea. I like the idea of players earning something for their name, image, and likeness. I understand where that's coming from, and there was a class action suit that I was a part of, in I don't remember exactly, but if you were played certain years and you were in a video game, you actually got, I think it was
you get a little cash.
Thing. Yeah.
Yep.
I understand where that's coming from. And I do think that players should earn something if the college and the NCAA is making money off them. I just don't know what kind of regulations and things are going on right now where that gets hauled in, so it just doesn't become, such a swaying factor. I was actually talking about it this maybe 2 weekends ago, and there are some guys now. If you look at the starting roster for North Carolina, those guys are older than the starting lineup for the Oklahoma City Thunder, on average. And I'm like, why could that be? And someone said, well, all those guys on North Carolina are earning more from their NIL than they would be if they declared for the NBA. I don't know if that's true or not. That was the theory. And I don't know how that affects, the NCAA at large and what, it's still pretty new. So I just think it's interesting. I hope that it doesn't get carried away. I understand where it's coming from, but I guess I'm not the best predictor of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I would call that the positive, is that if you want to keep good players in college, it's done that. I would say Creighton lost a couple players 2-3 years ago, right before NIL was getting going, that Marcus Zagorowski was one, and Tyshawn Alexander, and I think they would have been in that category that they probably would have stayed, right? If they could have made, I don't know what the numbers are, but if let's say you could even make $100,000, right?
Yeah.
And play college basketball, or go to the G League and make 40, or I don't know what they make there, but it becomes an easier decision to stay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Bonus question.
6.
Oh god.
Best player you ever had to guard?
Whoa, that's great. That's a great question. Whew. Let me see here. So I didn't guard him, but we played against Chris Paul when he was at Wake Forest.
Oh,
I
wow.
had to guard Josh Howard on a couple of possessions. They had played together. Um, the most amazing person he played in the league, but I don't think he had as storied of a career as Chris Paul, for example. Was Gerald Wallace.
Can't believe it at 61. The sick anticipation.
What's the best remedy? Get out and transition, and if someone's in your way, Gerald,
Stuff them with the ball into the neutral.
He played on the Kings. I don't know if you remember that name. I think he went to. I don't know if he went to Auburn, but he went to Wisconsin Center. But I remember at ABCD camp, I played against him, and anytime that his foot hit the paint, he was trying to dunk it, and I had never seen anybody do that in my life before. I mean, this guy was the most athletic person I'd ever seen. In that moment, I just said, I will never play against anybody like that ever again. He just left an impression on me. And obviously he went on to the NBA. I don't know if he made an all-star team or not, but first of all, he was a really, really nice guy. But he would just try to take off from anywhere. And I had never seen anything like it. But I also had guarded Emeka Okafor for a few possessions when we played UConn my senior year. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else. There was a couple of guys that made the league that I think were up there with the best that I've played against.
My only claim to fame is Penny Hardaway came to my gym, and I lived in Phoenix for about 12 years. And preseason, Penny and Ollie Miller and a couple of the Phoenix Suns showed up. And normally, if you saw anybody like that, they wouldn't play. I mean, But for some reason, he decided to play with us, and I accidentally scored on him. And that was like accidentally scored. That was my claim to fame for the rest. Like, all right, I'm done. I should just quit now.
What move was it?
I went to the hoop on him. I don't think he was expecting it.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome.
And I tell you, once.
Nice. But hey, that's all you need.
No, because after that, he was like, "Oh, no, that's not." Because obviously, well, you play with guys like people are competitive, regardless of like the real players. They're competitive.
Absolutely. That's a good story.
All right. You got to play with a couple of, longtime NBAers.
Yeah,
for sure. So let's. I want to get into. So I know we've. I don't think we said your age on air, but hopefully you're comfortable with saying that you're 42, which is going to play into some of my next questions.
Okay.
And we'll probably get us into some of the things with Swish House. So 42. What are you doing now to stay healthy, play basketball? What kind of at 42? What kind of routine do you keep yourself in to stay in basketball shape? If you're still playing basketball regularly, or what does that look like?
It's a multi-pronged approach. As you probably know, it's like just to stay healthy and stay feeling good. I mean, you have to do something every day.
Right.
So for me, what's important is doing what has been described to me as Prehab, which is basically doing some sort of band work that works on strengthening muscles where I'm weak. So I do a lot of band work for my shoulders, which I actually have just found out last summer that I have advanced arthritis in my right knee and I have the beginning of arthritis in my shoulders. So I'm starting to build up the muscles around them to sort of protect the joints.
Right.
So for me, it's a lot of that prehab band work. Stretching makes me feel good, so I do that too. I do some yoga, hot yoga, which also makes me feel better. So that kind of stuff to keep my joints healthy, to keep my tendons loose. Those are the type of things that I need to do almost daily in order to play. And then just from a basketball standpoint, I try to go to a Swish House class taught by another Swish House coach once or twice a week. And then there are a couple of men's leagues around the city that I'll play in, also once or twice a week. I mean, if we're talking an average week, I'll pick up, 1.5 times and then do something, strength slash prehab workout probably like 5 times a week. So that's kind of what and then Swish House once or twice. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
So when you say prehab, I've heard that term. My wife has introduced me to this app called or I don't know if it's a YouTube channel or Instagram channel, but they're called the Prehab guys. Is that what you're doing, or you're saying just prehab in general?
Just prehab in general. The term. So when I've been to physical therapy many times throughout my life.
Right.
After I was diagnosed with advanced arthritis, and they were, look, you're going to need, this was a random Wednesday. They were like, look, I don't know when it's going to be, but 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to need a knee replacement. And I was not expecting to hear that.
Right.
So I went to a recommended physical therapist, and she basically told me, like, we're doing a little bit of rehab because you have pain here and you have weakness here, but we're also going to do prehab stuff, which is basically, again, things that you can do to prevent any sort of pain or, acceleration of the arthritis in these areas. So it's like almost a preventative strength training to make sure that, I stay healthy and stay feeling good. And that when I do play, I don't accidentally pull something because I'm too tight or I'm too weak. So I guess, there might be different versions of what prehab means, but that's kind of how I'm using it.
Right. Do you dig into anything? I'll call it kind of alternative, even though a lot of it's coming more mainstream. Do you do cryotherapy regularly, or cold plunges, or red light therapy, or anything?
Not particularly.
I've
done cryotherapy before, and it did help. And also there are numerous studies that say it does help, especially if you're, going back to activity relatively quickly. It's kind of expensive here in New York to just go do cryotherapy.
Right.
So it does work. It's just not very accessible. I do like icing my knees. I mean, that's kind of like a old try and true thing, but that strategy is changing, that, you shouldn't ice because that reduces inflammation. Actually, the inflammation is what you need to heal your body.
Right.
So there's the research on that is changing too. But yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy. Same old, just boring stuff.
Right. Well, it's not too boring. I don't know. A lot of people are doing hot yoga. Although those things are starting to pop up all over the place now.
I know. There's a couple of them around the area. You got to find a good one.
I've started doing, and it's a matter of like what's convenient, right? That same thing with even getting out to play basketball is you got to find the places that are convenient to do it, because as soon as you get in your car and you drive 15 minutes or 20 minutes one way and the other way, like you've burned 90 minutes trying to get 40 minutes of exercise.
100%.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's say maybe it's could have been high school, college, or maybe even your adult playing pickup. Have you ever had an injury that either sidelined you for a significant amount of time or something that was darn close to career ending?
Thankfully, no. And I'm going to knock on wood. The worst thing that I've got so far is this arthritis diagnosis. Basically, the inside of my right knee is bone on bone. The only way I could really continue to play is either get a knee replacement or get hyaluronic acid injections. And basically what that does is it serves as like a lubricant where the cartilage is missing, so that it's not bone on bone. It's just kind of this like acid that doesn't allow the bones to like scrape against each other. I think the only major surgery I had was my freshman year going into my sophomore year at Yale when I tore my meniscus. And that's, even back then, that was a 1-month recovery. So thankfully, and I think it's probably because of the way I play too. I'm not a slasher. I'm not, going and trying to dunk on everybody. I'm just kind of like almost a spot shooter. So that has lended itself for me being protected from anything too major, thankfully.
No, I went through, I think it was just as we're getting out of COVID, an MCL injury. And And then, like right preceding that, I had an national player from a South American country knock me about. I always say that it was my best vertical jump ever, but I wasn't jumping. Like he just came through me and my body just went up like a rag doll and down. So now I think I'm going about 13, 14 months injury free. And every time I'm like, you know what? I've played 4 games. I'm going to stop. We're going to log another injury free session.
Good for you. I mean, that's a good strategy.
That is the goal. So let's fast forward all the way to your involvement with Swish House. So, as I said in the open, you are the chief operating officer of Swish House, and as I understand, you've opened up the New York City market.
Yep.
And then your role expanded with the company. Can you tell me, like, how did you hear about it in the first place? How did you get involved, with Swish House?
Yeah, so I had done the whole corporate job thing after I came back from Italy, and I really disliked my roles that I had. Very good learning experiences, but I needed to get out and try something new. So I dabbled in entrepreneurship for a little while with a buddy of mine from Yale from 2015 until the end of 19. And I really just liked the experience and liked building something. And unfortunately, we weren't able to raise enough money to continue to keep push the company forward to the next level. So we kind of disbanded midway to the end of 2019. Then I was going to go into something new, and then COVID hit. So that was very poor timing for everything. So I was in the middle of COVID with no job, just doing random things to try to earn money. And I think at the end of November or December 2020, a good friend of mine whom I played basketball with in New York just reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, I've got this really cool idea called Swish House. A buddy of mine in my network, he played at Northwestern. He said a guy I played with is connected with these guys in Chicago. You should talk to them." And I really wasn't doing anything. And the concept itself sounded super interesting. So I had a conversation with both Jonathan and Dave, and then Trevor, who was also an early founding member or founding part of the team. I had actually played with Trevor, and his little brother, Damon, played at Brown. So I kind of knew those guys anyway. So I had a conversation with Trevor, and it just seemed like a really cool idea with a lot of people in my network backing it. And then I said, I'm not doing anything right now. So I can help you with whatever you need. And then that basically I helped them with, I invested in the friend and family round. I helped them close that. And then I just kind of stayed with them. I became the first employee after the friend and family round closed, where they had enough money to pay me a little bit to work on the company. And then I've been here ever since. Wow.
So when you went to work for them, was there no presence in New York City even at that point? Correct.
So there were it was only in Chicago and maybe a few other locations that were testing grounds. And they kind of gave me, they were like, well, what are you good at? I was like, I'm pretty good at ops. And that's like kind of how my mind works. So why don't, you put me in something with ops? And then, okay, cool. So we were working on developing the company and trying to make it into something that was, robust and complete, and how we wanted to be this real fitness company that could go all over the US and internationally, and just thinking about how we could do that. So I was helping think about it, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be good at this if I don't actually do this myself. Like, how am I going to tell somebody how to open their own location if I haven't experienced it? So, and I coached maybe a class or two, but I hadn't coached many classes. So I was like, you know what, guys, if you give me your, some financial help here, if you back the New York location, I will open Brooklyn for us, and that'll be the best way for me to learn. I'll do it for a few years, and if it does well, then I'll come back and bring my knowledge to the 8 to HQ, and we can start pushing out to other locations. And that was 2 years ago. It was almost to the day. It was April 5th was our first, 2022 was our first class in Brooklyn. And now 2 years later, it's going pretty well. And I've learned a lot, and I think it couldn't have worked out better.
So one location in Brooklyn, and now what does it look like 18 months, 2 years later?
Well, I mean, we went from having like 5 hours per week in Brooklyn to now we have 17 hours per week in like what I would call a location and a quarter. So we have 14 hours in our Brooklyn location, and then we have 3 hours per week in the lower part of Manhattan financial district. It's with a school that we partnered with. The problem with New York specific, and I think it's specific to New York and maybe some other large cities, but right now for New York, is that there's a huge population density, but not enough gyms. So it's very difficult to find court time. So we're working on that right now. And the gym, we have a very nice gym in the financial district, but it's already full with other vendors so I can't expand the hours. So we've been growing month over month, year over year, and it's pretty exciting. I think, the proof of concept has worked here in New York.
Well, I'm just a big fan. I just think I am the as a matter of fact, I even talked to my neighbor last week, and he had heard about it, but we're here in Omaha, cool. And there's nothing here, or at least he thought he had heard about it. And we're kind of the demographic, right? We're 30s through 50s guys that played a little bit in high school, and we like the team aspect, and a lot of us don't want to get hurt. And it was interesting. My neighbor said that's his biggest concern is not getting hurt. And you guys have a solution for that, right? Is okay, just come to the class, right? Yeah. Where it's not contact, but it's still basketball and you're still doing games and things of that nature. So, for me, it just speaks to me. And I tried to organize a pickup basketball game around the NCAA tournament games here in Omaha this last weekend. And I failed miserably. I just got started too late when I thought about the idea. But that's where I think, if a Swish House exists in a community, right? I actually had people reach out to me to get a game going. And they're BYU fans, and they just found the stayonthecourt.com website. I've got something there about Omaha pickup basketball. So I had people reaching out, like people want to do it. So I feel like, there is a market, and if you can get into more cities, right, it's a no-brainer. You show up. First thing I usually do is look for where am I going to work out? Where's the gym? But if you know that Swish House exists, where's that location?
I hope that you're right. That's the idea. Get into all the cities that we can.
And so, did you have to become a licensee in New York City, or could you go and open up? I guess you work for corporate, right? So you're part of the mothership. But obviously, Hoboken, right?
You mean as a next
right, or neighboring cities in New Jersey in general?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I was HQ, it was an owned and operated location. Brooklyn was, and then we tried to go kind of should we do this franchise route? Right. But right now I am a licensee, so I am running the New York locations as a licensee, but also working for HQ. In terms of where we would go next, I mean, I've spent the last, 18 months trying to find a gym that can give me decent times that are consistent. That's proven to be our most difficult thing as a company in New York. I don't think that's true elsewhere, but here, growing it, I don't have, I would love to be able to put one in, between Hoboken and Jersey City, to put one in the Upper East and West Side and all that stuff. But that's our constraining factor is a location where I can say, all right, well, let's start off at 5 hours, but in 6 months or whatever, however it's going, I need 14 consistently without you kicking me out of the gym. Right. So that's what's tough right now. And, I think, I know Jonathan discussed this on his podcast with you, but having an asset light model is really good, except for in New York, because it's a uniquely difficult scramble for court time.
Right.
So that's kind of our one issue right now. So where the next one is, I don't know. We will see.
Right.
I'm still working on it.
And the classes that you do have, you just, like, I know in Chicago it sounds like you're doing some pickup ball as well, but in New York, is it all more the fitness class?
Yeah, I would love to get it to be more pickup stuff. There's a couple problems with it. One, people aren't going to pay as much for a pickup as they will for
Right.
class. So the time that I have on the court, I need to maximize from
Right.
a revenue perspective, and that's not going to be pickup. And the other part of that is that there are like at least 20 other companies that are offering some sort of pickup run already. So
Okay.
trying to get into that crowded market, like, I'm sure we would do okay, like we would do fine, but considering that it would have to be a volume play for a pickup game, meaning that I wouldn't make much margin on it because the courts are so expensive in New York, that I would have to have, 20 of them going at one time for it to make any sort of financial sense. So
Right.
what we've done is we've found days and hours where our members are willing to spend. So for example, our Friday morning, we call it Breakfast Club. We have a 7 a.m. class in Brooklyn. 7 to 8 a.m. we have the fitness class. And then from 8 to 9, we actually play pickup because it's kind of an open gym because it's Friday morning. But because it's Friday morning, most people work from home. So it's not hard for them to get back to their desks nearby at 9:30 to be on their computer. So they don't have to go into
Right.
work and shower. So we find times where we're able to kind of incorporate a pickup run as part of class. And that's been going pretty well.
So I'm always interested in obviously the basketball part, but I love how businesses run. So for the hours that you have now, what does that look like as far as like coach coverage? So you're not leaving after this podcast to go coach a class. I mean, for the existing, I'll call it inventory you have, do you
Yep.
need 7 coaches? Do you need 12? Do you need 2? What does that look like to?
Great question. And I really think it depends because right now, all of our coaches have another corporate job pretty much.
Right.
So, I mean, I coach anywhere between, let's call it 4 and 10 hours a week, depending on my coach's availability. So like I kind of serve as a sub. I
Right.
want to have at least 3 or 4 other coaches coaching classes because each one of the coaches has a style. And we also have some female coaches that female lady hoopers may prefer.
Right.
We have some guys who are guards. We have some guys who are bigs. So there's that diversity and, obviously different personalities and style. Our members get to choose who they like, which I think is really important. But again, because they all have their own jobs, I can't put them on 14 hours a week. This is not how they make their income. They do it because
Right.
they love the idea and they love being around the game. So I pretty much say, how many do you want to coach a week? And it's usually like, I'm good with 2 early in the week. And so I'm just trying to give them the access that they want and give them the experience that they want without trying to take away too much of, their regular schedule when it comes to their jobs and their friends and stuff. So I think we have 7 coaches that are active at this point that are each doing anywhere between, 2 and 4 hours a week. I'm usually the coach taking the most still.
Right.
I'm sorry, that was a long answer, but
No. That's what I was looking for is because I'm leading into and people can refer the podcast with one of the CEO and co-founder Jonathan Dews is out on the podcast feed if you want to go listen to that. And we get a little deeper into the intricacies of how it was founded and what the mission is and what the fitness classes work out. So we don't necessarily get into that detail here. But let's say somebody is interested. They're in Tulsa or Akron, Ohio, or not Akron because that's Jonathan's from that part of the world. But Birmingham, Alabama, or some mid-sized city. What's their first step if they're like, well, this sounds interesting in my community? How do I become part of that? Is that reaching out to you? Is that what does that look like? What would you want people to do?
Yeah, we've actually had that. People, I know Jonathan mentioned this, but when people come to me and say, "Hey, I'm really interested in doing this in Atlanta. Like, what do I have to do?" Well, I would start by saying, like, what do you actually want out of this? Do you want to be the person that's going to be running this yourself, or are you just going to be like sort of like a standby investor where you're going to put the money up, find someone to run it, and give it to them? We're trying to find people who want to be fully involved in the business, to coach, at least half the time, to reach out to members, to be an evangelist for the business, to sell the business, and to create and build communities. So that's that's the type of person we're looking for. Obviously, we want them to have a strong basketball background as well. But if you're thinking about it and you're in Tulsa or wherever, I would say, like, in the back of your mind, you have to be thinking, do I have access to gyms? Because for us, that's probably the biggest first hurdle. Do I have access to gyms? How much access do I have? Do I have people like another coach who's willing to help me with this? Because I think it would be, a person on their own could do it to begin with like 5 to 7 hours per week. But if you're going to grow to be 16 hours per week, or you want to have multiple locations have 30 hours a week, you're going to need 3 or 4 people that are going to help support you. So do you have that existing network that you can tap into, both for coaches and who can reach out to the community that exists already to bring members into Swish House and like kind of spread the word? I think those are like the first things I would want someone to think about if they were really truly interested in it. And as Jonathan mentioned, the financial upfront, the cash upfront to actually open one is not nearly as significant as if you were to open like a Soul Cycle or something like that. So,
right.
But having a little cash available to be able to, get licensing, get the equipment, all that stuff, also it would be important. But again, it's not that hefty.
No,
did that answer your question?
No, yeah, that's a really good description of the type of people, because even me looking at this, I'm like, this is really interesting. But then you start digging a step deeper, and you come to the realization of what you just described. Is you're probably better off coming into this with 2 or 3 other women or men who are really interested in this also, and forming some sort of partnership, so it's not all on you.
Absolutely.
Necessarily to get things built. No, this is great. So Paul, I know we've held you for a while. We're at an hour 20. So I know you probably have other things to do. We did not see an appearance by your cat, which is kind of disappointing.
She was yelling. I had to put it on mute.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, thankfully she was.
But
okay.
If you have social media or any place where you want people to connect with you, let us know where the best places are to connect with you.
You can. My personal Instagram is @Paul Vitelli. So PAUL, V as in Victor, ITELLI. And then if you want to connect with Swish House Fit, Swish House in the city. So it would be @Swish House Fit NYC, and that you can take a peek to what we're doing in New York City as far as the Swish House classes and stuff and community.
Awesome. Paul Vitelli, we really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Troy.
You bet. Thanks a lot. And for the rest of the Stay on the Court community, we'll have this posted, and it's on all of the streaming platforms. If you're seeing this on YouTube, you can pick it up on Apple or Spotify or Pandora. We're on all the platforms. Otherwise, if you're listening to this on the podcast, even though Paul's cat did not make an appearance and you want to see the video on YouTube, certainly go to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Stay on the Court. Thanks, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Here we go.